His name is everywhere, but he's no longer with us. Trayvon Martin, 17 years old, gunned down for no apparent reason. Today I have the opportunity to speak with two authors who will shed some light on just how we can get past this tragedy.
Hi, I am GbemiForTrayvon Perkovich. I'm the author of the middle grade novel 8th Grade Super Zero, which first came out in 2010 from Scholastic. I also have a few pieces coming out in anthologies. I'm very excited about one called Break These Rules, edited by the author Luke Reynolds. And I wrote a piece called Listening Toward Justice. And it's a collection of essays and pieces offering advice to teens on sort of societal rules and how they can break them. And that one was particularly important to me because it was sort of addressing how we are so often encouraged to stand up and speak out, which are important and vital things, but I wanted to write about how much we really also need to listen and sort of step back and be quiet and pay attention to another person's voice and another point of view and just what's going on in the world around us.
What are you trying to say? Amir, what are you trying to say? Disgusted. What do we want?
Which is a perfect segue into what we'll be discussing today, which is this Trayvon Martin tragedy. And what went through your mind when you heard about it?
When I first heard about it, it was just so shocking. It was unreal when I first heard about it. But I didn't know anything about that stand your ground law, and it just seemed remarkable that something like that could happen, and that the person who killed him, there was no investigation. Like, it just sort of seemed unimportant in some way, and that was just really disturbing.
And you're speaking out about it, as are others. Thousands of people all over the world are truly saddened and outraged and really don't know what to do, but they're doing what they feel is the right thing, which is speaking out. How do you respond to that?
I don't know if there's one thing that we can do, but I think what's important is to keep these conversations going and so that we're not only talking about this at crisis moments or during tragedies like this, but that, like for me personally, I think it was important to talk about this with my daughter as we were listening to it on the radio, but it will be important from now on to keep talking about these issues with her, or to see, I was thinking perhaps there's a way at her school to gather groups of students to talk about these things together on a regular basis. We do have a lot of things that happen, and I think that we pull together really well and quickly to address crises, but I think it's important to know that these conversations about race, conversations about gender, conversations about sexual orientation, all of these conversations are just about each other, are important to have with each other all the time.
And what did you say to your daughter? What was the conversation?
Oh.
Because I think that would be extremely helpful to those parents who would like to have a conversation, but yet can't find the words to discuss what the magnitude of this tragedy without stepping into an uncomfortable situation with their children.
It is very uncomfortable, and I don't know that I said the right things, but my daughter's 8, so it was clear to her, like she asked, well, why did he say he looks like he's up to something, and from what we heard, I said I don't see any reason why he thought that, except that he saw a young black boy walking and with a hoodie, and my daughter has a hoodie, and so we talked about impressions people have and what that means. And the first thing is not to reduce them to any one stereotype or any one little thing because of something that you see or something that you hear, and being aware of your own bias. Like we talked about, sort of seeing people, I may see someone and just sort of make quick judgments about them because they have something on that I don't like, or they're carrying something that I don't like, and how I have to be aware of doing that type of thing in little ways, because it sort of we put up barriers between each other, and then that goes to an extreme, like what happened with Trayvon Martin.
If you had a magic wand and you can make things better, where would you start, and how would you go about making change? And the change could involve compassion, could involve literature, could involve so many different aspects that... Go ahead.
It would definitely involve literature for me, as an author, but as a reader. Literature is so important to me, and was so important to me throughout my childhood. I know for me, some of the situations that I went through at different schools, I went through one very difficult situation at a school where I was the only black person in the building, and the children were young and very, very cruel. Some of the children were really cruel, and the only way, I didn't discuss it with my parents, I didn't discuss it with anyone really, and the way that I sort of coped and processed how I was feeling was through literature and through what I was reading. And so what I do now with my daughter, sometimes with book group projects and discussing books with students, is I just appreciate the opportunity to use literature to discuss some of these things that can be hard to talk about in real life. Like, literature offers a safe space to discuss some of these things, especially for young people and for adults. But I think as adults, we also have a responsibility to offer children the opportunity to go out of their comfort zone and to offer all kinds of literature, particularly multicultural literature, to all of our children, so that they can sort of see how these issues are articulated in different ways, and sort of help them articulate their own ideas and their thoughts in a safe way.
When I thought about Trayvon Martin and Zimmerman, the alleged, at this point still alleged, I think, shooter, I thought, gosh, if maybe his teachers had just sat down with him to show him a book about a culture unknown to him, and maybe that culture could include, a young black boy with a hoodie on.
Yeah.
Would that have stopped the shooting? Is it a matter of him just not understanding, the black youth of today and making these preconceived notions and judgments about them? And the first thing that I thought about when I heard of this tragedy, I saw a book come into my head and said, why couldn't he have read about us? Why did he have to go forth, do the shooting? If he had only known about us, if he had only read about us.
As you're learning about another culture, you are learning about yourself. Like I talked a little bit about being aware of personal biases, that there could have been things that he wasn't even aware of. He might have not taken an opportunity to step back and question his own views ever before this incident happened. And I think that we do have a tendency a lot of times to do that. We form opinions and make judgments and don't create space to question them and to really examine them in detail.
Gbemi, how can we go ahead? How can we push past this? How can we, as a community of authors and writers and readers and researchers and teachers and parents, how can we take this generation to the point where they do feel safe?
I think you're right. It is possible. I mean, right now, I mostly want to cry. But it is possible. And I think if we each think of that we each have the potential to do something small. I know when I thought about it this morning and thought about going to my daughter's school to talk about how we could have ongoing conversations about these and related issues. I know here in New York we have a place called the Morningside Center that I've gone to some trainings for and workshops for, where it help schools incorporate social and emotional learning into their curricula and help, just in general, help groups of students, classrooms, teachers, librarians, and parents discuss these issues in a productive way that empowers the students so that they're not just sort of being lectured to or just sort of being fed something and not having a chance to create and analyze and ask questions themselves, but to just have discussions. And it's hard work, and it's long work. And I think we first have to be willing to admit that this is going to be hard, long work, and it's not going to be addressed in just one event or just one thing. That we have to make a long-term, daily commitment to this so that anything that we're doing, people who are marching, people who are doing petitions, people who are just sitting down and talking to their child, however, I don't think there's any age where you shouldn't talk about these things. There's an age-appropriate way to talk about these things, but sitting down with our children to talk about them, anything we're doing that we don't stop, because it's going to fall out of the news cycle. We have to remember that the small daily work that we do matters, and we have to keep doing it.
That's important. Well, thank you so much. If you have any
Thank you.
closing
Thank you so much
thoughts.
for all that you're doing. That's the kind of things I'm talking about. It's amazing, and it's important. It's vital. Oh, Amy, this is really, really sad.
Okay.
Tell me what you need, what you really need. Tell me what you want, what you really want. Tell me what you need, what you really